People constantly ask me what it's like to be late diagnosed autistic. There's a lot of thoughts on it, depending on when you would ask me that question. If you had asked me that question back in October of 2024, a month after I was actually diagnosed, I would have told you that I was happy. I was very happy because suddenly you're set free from all the things that you think that you've done that have been bad. You're free from a lot of them. But it doesn't make the guilt go away. It doesn't. You feel better that maybe you're less of a monster inside than you thought. And that maybe you're not as dumb as you thought you were, or that you're not as much of a burden as you thought you were. But it's still there. It doesn't go away. It's still there. And that freedom comes with a cost. That feeling of, oh, this is what's wrong with me. That's what's going on, etc. There's a cost. Because afterwards, for me, the grief was much worse. Much heavier than that relief. The grief of what I could have done. The grief of what I could have done had I known that I was neurodivergent back in 1988, 1989, 95, 97, all through growing up, if I'd known. But no one was really diagnosed, barely, and it was always boys. As I grew up, there were more and more neurodivergent kids, but they were always boys. Always. And that's a big problem, because to this day, any woman can tell you that whenever we end up going to the doctor or whatever, we're very, very wary of what's going on, because we've been cheated and glossed over and ignored and gaslit forever. Since forever. And if I had known back then, I maybe wouldn't have had almost 30 years of depression and anxiety. I wish I had known. And if I had known the link that it has with hormones, the link between neurodivergent disorders and hormones is massive. More than anybody that I could explain in, any time. It is extremely strong. So much so that things that call me your hormones also call them menopause. They call me your mental health. Some of the medications that I'm on calm mental health, because they also have a lot to do with hormones, and they have to do with sensory issues, like being autistic or ADHD or a highly sensitive person or any of the other things. And yeah, while it's exciting at first, to figure out what the heck's going on, all of a sudden you have no idea who you are, because your entire life has been a lie. Everything has been a lie. And it's so fucking painful that I've lost a lot. I've lost jobs that I loved. I've lost opportunities. And I've lost people that are irreplaceable. And when people say to me, oh yeah, autism is beautiful, or autism is a gift, fuck you. Don't even try. because I'll never get to do the things that I want in my life. Because now that I am in, I entered perimenopause. I believe very strongly. I entered perimenopause 8 years ago because I started having what I didn't realize were panic attacks. And then eventually it was so bad, I had a massive one. And then within days, I was completely incapacitated. And it came along with, it was hormonal. And now I know why nothing worked. Now I know why I was gaslit so much by doctors. They had no idea what was going on. I tried hundreds of TMS sessions. It helped a little for a while, and then nothing. Nothing continued to work until now. Nothing continued to work. And if I had known any of this, if I had known myself, then my life would have been very different. Because I live on a frequency that is just slightly off everybody else. I'm there. I can see what everybody else is doing, but I just can't get there. I can't be like them. I try. I've always tried, and that's part of the problem. It's called masking. I've masked for so long and that's normal. You mask so long that, you mess yourself up, really. You screw up psychologically. It gives you depression and anxiety. Duh. I mean, I remember being in college, my freshman year, and I had to go study for finals or something. And I was in the library, and due to ADHD being a huge problem, maybe more so than the autism, I don't know. But the autism has such distinctive, So I was in the library and sitting in one of those, chair things with the sectioned off walls so that you could sit and study. And I sat there and sobbed because I could not study. Things that I wasn't terribly super interested in, but still had to take the class anyway because it's normal. You need to learn other things. I couldn't. I floundered until I transferred and started doing the thing that I actually like. And I started getting really good grades. So you grow up like that, and a lot of us grow up believing that we're stupid because school ends up being so difficult. If I had known, things wouldn't have been so hard. It would have been so much easier on me. And I wouldn't hurt people and not understand things. I wouldn't fall into, mental health crises. I wouldn't have. But I think all of this happened, finding this out. I think that's around when I fell into full menopause. And I'm on hormone therapy. And I also am on another medication that just happens to be really, really beneficial for women who are in menopause. So things are a lot better. But as I said at first, I was so lost. I was so lost that I started acting like, I don't know who I was. And I just said this to my therapist even today, that it's like I was in a dissociative state a lot during last winter. The varying. There are things that I remember, and then there are things that I remember so vaguely that I can't place exactly what it was. I was horrible to everybody. And I wondered to myself, if I'm a decent person, then how is that monster in there? How is that person in there? If I'm a good person, if I'm an empath, if I'm a kind person, where did it come from? That it's something rotten. Now, my therapist said, well, your neurochemicals were completely messed up, and you were, I was in, she said, you were in a dissociative state, because both from, I had been in bad autistic burnout, that I figured out what it was, and it was awful. I was catatonic for a lot of it, but then I was also dissociating. She said that is mostly from the fact that growing up as an autistic kid or an ADHD kid, you hear no and are rejected constantly. It's something like 40,000 times more than most kids throughout their life and throughout their school career. That's why a lot of autistic and ADHD people end up drug addicts, alcoholic, or taking out their pain on something else. Me, I took my pain out on myself. I ended up being a people pleaser, codependent as hell. I look back now and, like people would say, no, but I was a pain in the ass. I was a massive pain in the ass. And I see that because things got worse. And I ended up in the hospital. And decided that I wanted to go away to a recovery program away from home. And I did that. I ended up in Knoxville, Tennessee for 2 weeks in a residential, which helped. And then of course, you move to the partial hospitalization program in Chattanooga. And you live in a house with other people that are in the program, and then you're bussed every day back and forth. It was not therapy as much. It was learning. You learned about you. You learned why things happen the way that they do. And you learn even further what had happened in your brain whenever such and such happened. Or years ago, linking things throughout your entire life. And learning coping strategies that work, that actually work, that I know how to use. And just that understanding, just getting it, has been almost mind-blowing. That within a year, that how much I know now. How much I know. And I try to look back on things that have happened and say to myself, I didn't know better at the time, which is true. But it still doesn't mean that it wasn't my fault. Because mental illness or whatever isn't an excuse to hurt people. It's not. You don't understand that when you're in the middle of it, when your nervous system is wacko, you don't understand that. You don't get it at all. You don't understand that that's... You don't really understand that your body is completely... even where stuff comes from in your brain, even. Like, the parts of your brain that are affected. Like, because we would learn parts of the brain that have and I would link them and connect them, and it made sense because of some specific, symptom or trait of my autism or my ADHD, ADHD, AuDHD. That's what we call it in kind of the community, I guess. And it's growing up not knowing has been extremely, I've been so angry. I've been so angry about it. Like, why? Why do I, almost like, why me? But I don't want to say that because there's people that are much worse off than I am. But it doesn't mean that I'm in less pain all the time. Physical, too. Being neurodivergent, autistic, has physical and painful symptoms. And it depends on the person, but it happens. So, yeah, I was relieved, and then the grief happened, and I ended up in Tennessee, blah, 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 because I had been completely dissociated. I was at the point when it got really bad, I was depersonalizing. That means I was out of my body. Now, the things that I did to my friends and family then, I cannot get over, and I never will. I will never get over it, even though I try so fucking hard to explain to them that root, that me wouldn't do that to them, that to make them not feel as bad, so that they understand that it's not about them. It's not them. It's me. That they didn't do anything wrong at all. Not one of them did anything wrong. I mean, well, mostly. There's a few. Sometimes it's hard with family members and, but not understanding. But it's a process. It's still a process. Still going to be a process. And, knowing now and having all of that stuff behind me, the ability to regulate myself most of the time. I mean, when you're autistic, the meltdowns will never really go away. They still happen. Sometimes they're not even visible, that you don't know someone's freaking out in the middle. Or they look different, or they happen less, which is the case. It has to do a lot with, emotional stuff and things like that. But it's also sensory. If I get overwhelmed or overstimulated, it's an explosion waiting to happen. And the explosion is just me curled up into a ball, basically screaming. And it's painful. But that's what it's like to be late diagnosed. To have the first half of your life a cloud with obviously lots of wonderful things happened, in my life. But a lot of bad things that I've taken personally because I thought they were about me personally. And it turns out that a lot of it has to do heavily with me being neurodivergent. Pretty much everything has to do with it. It affects everything. I'll never be perfect. I will always be neurodivergent. But I love really hard. I love exceptionally hard. I get attached to people. If I'm once once I'm attached to you and I love you, I will always love you. It doesn't stop, regardless. And I also understand, I'm quite good with languages, and I understand why. I also understand why I can replicate an accent and not have any trouble. I understand why I had social issues. I understand why I have misunderstandings with people a lot. I understand that I process things from the bottom up. Like, I see the little things first and then it comes together. That's very typical. When everybody else is able to see the whole thing first. But I have to do things in a specific way or else I can't. That's why I never worked in groups when I was in school. I resisted the heck out of it. I hated it because I would be working in reverse to everybody else, backwards. And that's not what they want, you know. Being a veteran teacher myself, hoping that one day that I can go back. I can see everything and understand. And I think it made me a better teacher. It's actually, things that cause pain, heavy pain and trauma, they're awful, but what do they do to you is, well, they mess you up, but they also give you empathy. And anybody that I see, I was in my program with people that had substance abuse issues, addiction. And the ones that really wanted to get better were no different than me. No different. They just used destructive coping strategies just like I did. I would take it out on groups that I was in part of, and then inevitably have huge fallouts with people. I took it out on that. I would focus on things that didn't need to be, as a neurodivergent, I hyper-focus on stuff, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about escape, ways to escape. And a lot of it has, online communities had been a big one. So taking it out on, trying to cope with things in ways that me with people pleasing and codependency and negative self-talk, basically, self-harm in, several ways. Not terrible or anything, but and what it all turned me into. I'm able to see it now. I can see. I see who I am in a much clearer light, and I see how, most important, how I got here. I understand how I got here, and I see things in other people too. I always have, but all of the different things that I learned in Tennessee and through school, through my therapy, and I'm still doing EMDR, everything that I've learned has given me the perspective. And that's maybe the one thing about having so much crap and being in the hospital so many times, being gaslit by doctors that really didn't know a lot about autism and didn't know about, women in menopause. Imagine that. Yeah. Just drugs. That's it. They give medications. So anyway, the people that I was with in Tennessee, the people that were there for addiction problems, had done the same thing that I did to family members. Only a lot of times it was worse because it involved substance abuse. Not worse, but I can't really. It still was detrimental to whoever was on the other end. And people, the biggest, worst grief the worst grief happens. And even this is in the book, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. This is the Bible on trauma. Says that the number one thing that causes trauma is having hurt someone else. Having hurt people that you love. And they did it too. None of us meant to. None of us wanted to. And that's why I still wonder if that person is in there and why. Where it came from. What messed up part of my brain did it come from? And I'm told that it doesn't do that. That it's your amygdala, basically. Well, one of my teacher therapists called it amygdala hijack. Your amygdala shuts down and your prefrontal cortex is disabled too. So you can't think until your body is regulated. And their body, a lot of times because of the drugs and alcohol and all of that, they are dysregulated all the time and can't make good judgments because they can't get out of it. And there was times that, of course, back in the winter and stuff, and times before that, I couldn't get out of it either. And I couldn't understand. I couldn't understand anything. Well, being autistic, number one, is hard misinterpreting things that people say. So, growing up, half of my life not knowing was just foggy and hard. Really miserable. A lot of times. And not understanding what's wrong with you. Feeling like an alien everywhere you go. But I still do. But I know why. I still understand. And I guess that's one of the few good things about being late diagnosed. Is that I understand the pre and the post. And I can empathize with people. And I understand. I understand that people, even, my friends who were recovering from addiction, people do things for a reason. Because a lot of times for that, it's because they're hurting. Some of them in the worst pain that they've ever had. And yeah, so it's not fun. Part of me wishes that I was, normal. But I look at myself and I said, I can't be. Because then I wouldn't have all the personality traits and stuff that I have. The thing I really wish is that it could have been pointed out when I was a child, and being told no, and that it wasn't good enough. Not being able to finish things. Being told that I was lazy. Being told that I needed to try harder. Being told in college that I would never be a teacher. So, of course, I transfer and I get grades and graduate. A lot of times. I'm used to it. I'm used to being told that I'm not enough. By a lot of people. Throughout, my childhood and trying to, go through school and all that. But not being enough in a lot of other ways too. No. Yeah. So that's the way that it kind of is.